Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. Hello, Giovanna. Glad you're here. All right, let's see. What are you guys working on? Type in the chat real quick. Tell me what you're working on these days. What types of deals are you looking at? How are you making money? Or maybe you're divesting. Hi, Suzanne. We're happy to have you here too. Giovanna is working on some health issues and healing. I'm sorry to hear that, Giovanna. Reach out to me. I have been where you are. The last couple of years have been all about working on health issues and healing. And hopefully I might have some tips and insights to share with you. Suzanne's working on Spring Lake Manor. I know that is your heart and soul, Suzanne. I'm sure it's looking beautiful up there. Debbie is doing some portfolio seasoning, divesting a bit happy to be here. We're thrilled to have you here, Debbie, and portfolio seasoning is a great thing. It's funny how many of us spend so much time thinking about buying properties and buying investments, but we typically put a very small percentage of our time into thinking about what does the divestment strategy look like. We talk a lot about having exit strategies, but what does it actually look like? When we talk about selling, what are our criteria for selling? What is the valuation? What is the plan? How are we handling the capital gains? So that's a great thing to be doing, Debbie, and definitely I think something that maybe we don't talk enough about as investors. Maybe I can put something in place for that for a future webinar. Oh, and Kendra's working on building her vacation rental portfolio. Kendra, you are in the right place. Jen is an expert on building these alternative type portfolios. All right, let's get started for today. I am going to do the quick intro as always, and then I'll be right back with Jen. Welcome to today's webinar. This is Executive Rentals Done Right, and we are talking about how to boost profits with extended stays. My guest today is Jen Maldonado, and for those of you who are not familiar with this name, it's because Jen's a superstar down in the US. She's working hard doing her thing, and I absolutely love the opportunity to be able to bring some guests up from the US because it feels like there's just so many more transactions down there. There's so many more people, and that equates into so many more opportunities. So, what I love to be able to do is talk to the people from the US who are killing it down there, doing such a great job, and then figure out how do we adapt this and how do we make this work in Canada if we choose, or it gives us the opportunity to start to build our network in the US for people who can be mentors, experts, coaches, and power team members for us. So just a little bit about, this is my disclaimer, of course, and it wouldn't be 2024 if we couldn't have a disclaimer in here that Jen is someone who I have been on her podcast or series, and we had a great time. We really connected, but I have not been through Jen's books. I am not her accountant. So anytime you are doing anything in real estate, you must do your own research. Just because someone's standing on a stage or someone's on a YouTube channel does not automatically mean that everything they say is something that you should adopt and bring into your world without doing proper due diligence. And Jen, as an engineer, I think is probably going to touch a little bit on trust but verify, I'm sure, as part of our conversation today. So make sure you're talking to other people about their experiences, talking to your legal and accounting teams. Make your decision from a place of knowledge and not because they're on a stage or on an online platform. I know I shouldn't have to say this, but I'm going to say it just because I wouldn't be me if I didn't. So, three key pieces for today. First of all, the recording. If you need to jump off early or if you registered but are not able to attend the full session today, I promise you we will be sending out a recording. It'll be in your inbox before the end of the week. So don't worry if you have to jump off. You will be able to get all the nuggets from Jen, I promise. The video will also be posted on my YouTube channel, so you can always subscribe there just in case you miss registering and don't receive a copy of the recording right to your inbox. In the chat, make sure you click on here it is over here. It defaults, again, I keep changing it. Every time there's an update, it goes back, but make sure you click the drop down and go to everyone because otherwise Jen and I are the only people who see your witty and insightful comments. And of course, we want to share that with everyone else who is here today. And then as always, this is a webinar, which means that I have the Q&A tab at the bottom. Please make sure if you have questions for Jen, instead of typing them in the chat, put them in the Q&A so that we can go back. The Q&A is an absolute gift for us as presenters and panelists. It means we can hold on to your questions and we can circle back around and we don't lose them in the chat box. So Q&A tab for questions, chat box, click the drop down to say everyone, and this the recording of this meeting will automatically be sent to anyone who registers, as is the case with all of my webinars. So our agenda for today is I'll do a quick introduction, of course, of me, and then for Jen as well, we'll have a dynamic discussion. So as you can tell, we've changed the format of my webinars a little bit. Rather than having people just come on and present, it's much more conversational. It gives us the ability to be able to ask questions, seek clarifications, make sure people understand. Then we'll be able to take some questions from people in the audience and we will wrap up. My goal is always to finish on time right at 1 o'clock. I am your host for today. My name is Elizabeth Kelly. I have been a real estate investor for, by 2025, I'll be able to say 20 years. And it feels like a long time. I hate that, but I love it at the same time. I am also a business coach. So my job is to help people find or create cash flow. And it has never been more needed or more important now than it has become in the last few years. So if you have an idea, a vision for starting a business, if you're struggling with your portfolio, if you want to create more cash flow and financial stability in your life, I would love to hear from you. I do offer a free 30-minute discovery call. The link will be at the end of the webinar. So please grab it and book a call with me. I'd love to connect. We have as our guest today the gorgeous Jen Maldonado. Jen is a former Fortune 500 engineer turned real estate entrepreneur with a passion for impact-driven investing and empowering women in leadership. After retiring from corporate life at only 32, she built a $150 million portfolio. Did you catch that? $150 million. That is impressive. This includes residential and commercial properties and economy extended stay hotels serving underserved communities, which we're going to dive into a little bit. As a sought-after speaker, coach, and co-author of the Amazon #1 new release, You Got This, Jen has inspired over 7,000 female entrepreneurs nationwide. She continues to innovate and empower through her investments and her upcoming $50 million real estate fund. Ooh, Jen, you're a busy lady.
Apparently I get bored and I get in good trouble.
I love that with engineers. Your thought processes are so structured and you're so great at building systems and processes. It's like you're genetically wired to be able to grow quickly.
Yes, we do. We do. I think that a lot of people think that engineering thinking it's just math or it's knowing how to do electrical or mechanical or designs. But in reality, engineering, it's a way of thinking. And that's why we're so structured. It helps us figure out difficult problems in a structured way so we can get it rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. Your approach to things is so detailed, it's so logical, it's so mathematical. And I love that because I feel like in the world of real estate, there's a lot of hype out there. There's a lot of like, go big or go home, take action now, otherwise you're a failure. There's just so much hype. And I really want to bring it back to the fundamentals. And that's one of the things I love about you is that you are so detail oriented. Tell us a little bit about maybe we should have you just quickly run through what your portfolio is. And then I want to move into talking about how you find opportunities.
For sure. I mean, first of all, I want to welcome everyone. Elizabeth, I'm honored to be here with all of you. And I want to take a moment to congratulate everyone that joined today because making this choice, it's a power, right? It's a very powerful step to change your life by being here. They just create a space to grow, right? To receive one simple idea, one message that could turn everything around for them, and they're opening themselves to those opportunities. And it's the same with me, right? I went through difficult journeys. I'm not going to say no, but I learned the importance of creating fundamental concepts for investing in real estate. Everyone gets hyped up because real estate has consistently been one of the largest components of wealth for American families. And, a lot of people say, how do you get to that conclusion? Again, I'm data driven. So I went to the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances to figure out if this was true before I start jumping into the real estate financial security developing. So what I did is I just took one idea, and Elizabeth, you and I have some similar roots, right? We read that book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, and we took that idea and we created something. And I aligned my purpose and my unique vision from one step to turn it into $150 million. How did I really did this? And I think a lot of people think that you just jump and you get successful. I just started with one real estate property. It was a duplex. My desire was to get one home because at the time my lease was going really, really high. I was living in Burbank, California, or Los Angeles area, and I could afford a home and pay it and for less money than really getting a lease, right, property. So I decided to get my duplex, and through that duplex, I built an entire portfolio. I went ups and down. I did what they call house hacking. I took what I had now, which it was a credit card of $10,000. I took my credit because at that time I have like a credit and I have a W-2 that allow me to apply to the traditional financing, right? I took an FHA loan, and I also did have some retirement accounts. In this case, I used my 401k solo, and I used $12,000 as a down payment of a duplex that it was worth it at the time 409. And Elizabeth, that was the start. That's when I knew, I think I'm doing things wrong, right? This is a real interesting project where I can take this property and cash flow and pay for my mortgage and also get tax reduction. I definitely need to dive into real estate more than what I thought. So I went through extensive training, and after going through ups and downs of making a lot of money to the point that I was very excited, to the point that I have $35 on my account, right? And I spent everything, I didn't have any savings. It's nerve breaking. It's like jumping, knowing that you don't have a parachute, right? But what happened through that process? There was a lot of resilience. There was a lot of, there has to be a way. There was a lot of mindset playing, plus continue to learn different strategies in real estate. So what happened when I sold that property 4 years after that, I make a profit of $250,000. In the meantime, I learned a lot of creative finance, and I got in the US, and specifically Bakersfield, California, with a more affordable market. I got a property for $10,000 down payment. I took over the payment. The property was a duplex, and I already have a tenant in the back, and the property in the front needed to be rented. That property itself, I could have rented for $1,200, and the one in the back was already paying $640. My payment for that loan, since I took it over, was $640. So I just needed to get a tenant down there, right? And that tenant needed to pay X amount of money. In that case, it was $1,200 a month. So you can imagine, after doing the math, I was cash flowing $950 a month, literally from nowhere. And the $10,000, I did have the credit card, but I knew a friend that she was a beautician, and I talked to her about it, and she got excited. I learned how to do private lending and how to write a note with an attorney. I used my credit card to pay that. And after I paid that amount, Elizabeth, I was cash flowing $950, but I needed more money. So there was a lot of lessons learned in my journey from 2012 until 2017, when I sold my first duplex. So what happens after that? And we can spend an entire day talking about all the lessons on how I build this portfolio, right? But when that happened, I was doing a rental property and a duplex. Then I got into a single family home. Then I got into buying one note with a few friends, and we flipped the note in matter of months, and we make like, I think it was like $800,000, and we split it. And that right there built my net, or my cash, my big fat check. And a lot of people think that it was easy. I spent a lot of time. I dedicate time, resources to learn, to get coached, to be mentored. And to the point that when I had those $35 on my account, I went and applied in a job. But when I applied to the job, it was like being away from what I really wanted, creating a life in my own terms with real estate. So I want to visit a few friends, a few networks events, just in a matter of a few days, and I learn about other people's money. And that was an entire different business. You're a business coach too, so you understand how that happens. And what I find out is that one of the things that I knew and what I have on my hands right away to start was access to capital. I'm not talking about me, Jennifer, having all the cash. I'm talking about having access to capital, to friends and family that I built trust with them based in a relationship for a long time. This is not people I was expecting to get money from. But as soon as I found this deal, Elizabeth, I knew, and for everybody, I knew that this deal was amazing. It has the right people behind that. It was a development project. It had like a big equity. I'm talking about 2.5x of the equity. So you have to screw up an entire project in order to just break even. So there was a lot of margin for error. And what happened is I got into the opportunity, right? I seized the opportunity. I'm like, I need to get this project, but the project is good. It aligns with who I am. I want to learn development. And after I get into that project, I found myself from being $35 on my account, getting involved with a $50 million development project in Newport Beach, California. And of course, this is people that I learned a lot about them. I did my research. I also did background checks. I learned so much, right? Because in the past, I lost money with the wrong people for the wrong reasons, not trusting what I knew and not trusting the numbers. And it was pretty interesting to go through all of that journey, to the point that when I got into that project, I got very excited because I'm like, you know what? I can really do this. So it took around 4 to 5 years to build my confidence in different projects and make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes, right? But it took that time for me find what it was my purpose, what I was passionate about. And what I was passionate about was the numbers, and bringing a second level of thinking to look at deals in a way that not most people do, right? I know that with today's challenges in the market, from mortgage rates, financing challenges, competition, right? Now we are, everyone in different areas in the world are buying in different areas in the United States. I knew that competition was able to move quick. Competition was able to buy everything and inflate the prices more than what it's supposed to. I needed to find a different way of thinking. So that different way of thinking it made me start looking at projects in a different way. And I will share in a little bit a formula of what I use in order for people to figure out how can they really find opportunities in a different way. But fast forward, I went through duplexes, I went to note investing, I went through lease option with multifamily. I later expand the same concept I learned in that small multifamily. I used it to buy my first hotel in Phoenix metro area. And I went also through development projects 1 to 4 units. I have done non-performing notes, performing notes, tax deeds, tax liens, private lending, syndications, to the point that now I'm managing funds, and we are acquiring projects at that level of extended stay hotels to build all of this. Now, these didn't happen like yesterday, right? I went through a journey, and maybe we can discuss more that journey, the lessons I learned. to go from my first duplex, right, to the $150 million portfolio that we are managing and how we are preparing for our next steps. So does that summarize well, Elizabeth?
Yeah, it does. And it's amazing how many commonalities there are because, like you, I tried a whole bunch of different investment strategies. And I had a really interesting discovery call last week with a gentleman, and he was telling me he has 5 or 6 properties. And one of the things that I discovered was the more I played around in land development and in the multifamily space, the apartment buildings, all these kinds of things, I ended up being asset rich and cash flow poor. And that's a really
Yes.
common place for real estate investors to be in. And the challenge with creating this situation where you're in this cash flow crunch or this cash flow deficit is when we come into a space like we've been in with the market trending down the way it has in the last couple of years. In Canada, we've lost 20 to 30% for the most part on our investments in the last couple of years, depending, of course, on the market and the conditions. But it's definitely been a bit of an eye opener in terms of you and I have both landed on businesses that create cash flow. Like we've learned all the lessons, we've done all the fancy, shiny things, and you and I are literally back at something that not a lot of people talk about, which is the extended stay. And for me,
Yeah.
this is a property that we purchased in 2012 in Kirkland Lake, Ontario, so about 7 hours north of Toronto. And this property bringing it through COVID and then helping it rebuild afterwards, we're going to talk about how you look at and how you find deals and what your rules and the opportunities look like for you. But I literally had this property already in my portfolio, and I'm like, I need cash flow like 3 years ago. Forget yesterday. I need cash flow like 3 years ago because I am so asset rich, but properties aren't cash flowing. So what can I do? And just by starting by looking in my own backyard and taking a building that I already had owned and figuring out how to optimize it, that was how I ended up in the extended stay space as well. So people come and they stay in my building, and it sat vacant for 10 years before we bought it. People looked at it, they said there's potential here, but nobody could come up with a plan for how to make it happen. So it sounds like you've done some stuff like that too. Tell us a little bit more about the property in Phoenix, Arizona, your first hotel.
And actually, I will share the reasons why a lot of people shy away from these kind of projects, but the pros and what they're missing, right?
Mm,
So one of the things I created these underwriting criteria. There was a speaker one time, and I heard him talk about hotels. And the only thing that I was always excited to play with my family, it was the game Monopoly. And the first thing that came to my mind is like, ooh, 4 houses, 1 hotel. This is how you do it, right? But based on the experience I got through the journey, I knew that it was a completely different monster. So I took my time, stepped back, and I went through all of these research. When does the hotel works? And then as I look into it, the first piece of information I learned, it was the different type of hotels, from the luxury, ultra luxury full service to the ones that are limited economic service. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting, right? A lot of people fantasize with the luxury, right? And at the end, that if they fall in there, they will pay a lot of money. Well, that's not true. Expensive hotels require a lot of capital and a lot of time to really make that money. It requires deep pockets, a lot of understanding on how to run those luxury hotels. So as I was going through the process of researching, I find out, the no so expensive, but not the crazy ones either, that are the smaller ones under 80 units, right? And the reason why I look at all the hotels over 80 units, it's when I made the numbers and I started reading and researching, I noticed that if you don't have 80 rooms, it's very challenging to maintain a payroll. You have to get very creative in order to
mm,
maintain your hotel, provide multiple services or multiple creative ways to increase the value of your property. And I'm like, oh, that's a lot of work. It sounds fun, but can I not have to spend that much time on this hotel, right? So as I was researching more and more, I find out 5 main pitfalls and why people get really scared about hotels. The first one is it's really hard to entry on it because the entire industry in the States, I don't know how it's outside of the United States, most of the hotels are owned by the Patel family. It's an Indian family. There's an amazing story that I recommend you to go and read, right? If you haven't seen it. But they own 70%, and they find these projects because no one was willing to finance their deals, and they have to be together as a family in order to get their first hotel, right? So I start looking at this and I'm like, why did Patel family own so many hotels? And they were just keeping this little secret for themselves. And I'm like, this is not fair, right? There's a lot of money to be made here. But if they're doing this, there's a reason why they're doing this. So after that, I find out that not only they were having challenging financing these deals, the banks tend to be very, very careful when they're financing these kind of deals. They consider these deals very risky because they only think about the model of the luxury hotel up to the full service that have a lot of variation in income, right? So you don't know how that hotel is going to look. So for me, that wasn't an issue. For me, okay, that's a problem to solve. How do you solve this? And the more I start digging, then I find out the extended stay hotel. The extended stay hotel is, I call it like the multifamily with the upside of, like hotels. It's a combination of them where you create a base income that helps you run a sustainable business. And then the seasonality allows you to outperform any kind of projects. Another thing that I find out when I was doing my research on this is that most of the projects fails because they were involved with the wrong people or they have the wrong manager running the project. So I did a lot of research. I went into legal research. I went into financial research. I went into numbers. I talked to a few people in the hotel industry and I collected this information and I created my underwriting criteria, right? And based on that, I say, okay, if I can get into one hotel, how does that hotel look? And it needed to be in metro areas because I wasn't only dealing with my own money, I was dealing with investors' money. And for me, I have a big challenge. When I invest with my money, I tend to take a little bit more risk. But when I'm investing with investors' money, then that's a different story, right? There's a different criteria. I am very conservative and I want to ensure that not only we can sustain the operations, but investors can get paid, right? And that's how I build like my relationship with investors. However, I went back to the numbers, and as I'm looking at the numbers, I noticed too that in 2019 and 2020, the industry of extended stay hotels outperformed all the other hotels. And this is why in 2020, Starwood Capital and the other companies bought extended stay hotel, overpay at that moment $2 billion for those hotels when the portfolio wasn't worth it that. And that for me was the trigger, like, if these people are doing that, definitely this is something I need to dig more. And the more I dig into it, Elizabeth, the more I find out about the unique things about the extended stay hotels. Not only they outperform the industry because they did have a base, but they give you adaptability and flexibility in your target market. Why is that important on today's market? If you think about this, you can shift like this to any kind of long-term rentals, short-term rentals, contracts with the government, and things like that. So what I find out is that while the multifamily sector starts suffering because the government says, hey, with COVID, you cannot take people out and you have all of these rules to follow as a tenant, in the hotel industry, they say, well, they're not tenants, and the eviction process for a hotel, it's call the police, they didn't pay, get them out. Now, a lot of people say, yeah, but they put in the US this limit and capacity of 25% occupancy. Yes, but in the extended stay motel model, they don't do it for the long term. They only do it for the seasonality. So what happens? I was always extending my stays with all of these people and renting for over 80%. So my occupancy never came down of 80%. And if you look at all the statistics, while every other hotel was suffering, extended stay hotels outperformed. And that's what I call a second level of thinking. Now, some realities about extended stay hotels, economic level. They're not going to be fancy. They're not going to be fancy. You're going to see 2 to 3 stars because there's no full service. They're the people that you bring to these hotels, they don't tend to provide like a full service. Like it's not the kind of people you will hire to manage a luxury hotel, right? So you get a lot of challenges in the process. But when you look at the cash flow, when you look at the numbers, when you look at everything that tells you this is an amazing project, you cannot overlook what you just saw, right? And that's what happened with me, but it gets even better, right? A lot of people have niche and you have to find your niche. On my case, I did have one advantage. I knew a lot of people. And because of that, I got into this hotel with a lease option. And just let's talk a little bit about numbers. So the hotel was, we bought it for 8.2. And I say bought it, it was a lease, right? We did a lease with option to purchase. But here's what was going on. They asked us $800,000 down, and we were able to pay their loan, right? But in the process, I also, because I knew a lot of people, I have some connections with the government, and we discovered multiple contracts that were assigned to the city trying to find where to allocate certain demographic, from homeless to people with COVID, transitional homes, abused women, you name it. And we were able to go and get those contracts. How does that shift my project? So I took a regular hotel that the return was like probably like 14%, and people were saying you're overpaying. Normally, I don't like to overpay. I just pay based on performance. But for me, knowing what I could do with this hotel, it was no brainer. So I brought that specific contract, government contract. And just to give you a perspective, right? I didn't only cut the expenses on the payroll side because I didn't need front desk people. I just needed housekeeping, maintenance, and security. I also increased the income because not only now I have a steady, sustainable income from the government, and they were paying over market rate, right? Because of what it takes to manage this property. But also I was able to add other services through the government too, that they were providing other resources and they didn't have anybody to cover those. So we went from making $1.2 million to making $2.8 million just on the first year, right? And after that, we start making 3.2 with the new services. And the more that we discover, the more relationships we build, the more the city and actually the state asked us to go and get another hotel because they needed to place these people. So we went and got another hotel, and that's how we start expanding the extended stay hotels. Only with one idea, one decision, and looking at this project with completely different perspective than everybody else. Because my biggest investors told me, no, I don't want this hotel, because it didn't give them the bragging rights, right? And that's okay. It doesn't align with their goals. Personally, I wanted to get this hotel, invest on it, make money for my investors, but also have a purpose for this hotel. And we didn't only host these people, the services that we provide took some of the homeless out of the system, right? Now they have their jobs. And not only that, after that, some of those people now are being trained to do other kind of jobs in some of the other hotels. So it is up to you how you want to look at a project that can turn into a magnificent opportunity, right? Now, don't get me wrong, I also have a couple of luxury Airbnbs in the California area, and I tend to do the same thing. I'm always thinking about who is my target market, how can I bring more value to my existing business model, and how can I change this in a way that not only make us more money, but when I exit, I have a big fat check, not only the cash flow. So, but that's how I got into those hotels. And the funny thing is that this hotel came to me via a hard money lender, right? That they called me and they didn't know what to do with the hotels because they were trying to refinance the project. They were trying to get rid of the projects. They called a hard money lender, and this hard money lender used to be a friend of mine that I met networking. And he told me about it because we were talking about other projects, and I told him I was interested to meet with these people that he was trying to help them to solve a problem. So you can find those deals in different ways. You can find it behind your yard. You can find it in another state. You can find it in another country.
Yeah,
So
I love that. Um, there's so much here to unpack. So one of the things that I wanted to highlight, again, a commonality between your between your business model and where I've ended up. For me, the building that we use as our extended stay, it used to be a seniors home, and then they changed the rules and the regulations for seniors, and every room had to have a washroom. So for us, we bought the building and we started renting it out to people, to contractors and people who were coming to Kirkland Lake and needed a place to stay. And I love what you said about it doesn't have to be fancy. Like a lot of us, we want the luxury, we want the high end stuff, but there's a lot of money to be made. And for us, we're not there. There's a brand new microtel that's in town. It's like $200 a night, beautiful rooms. It's 5 years old. We are not that. And we have done so well by looking to serve the the entry level markets, by looking to serve the people who are coming to Kirkland Lake. They need somewhere to stay for a couple of weeks, a couple of months, and they have another home to come back to. So they need to save as much as they can to send back to their family who's living somewhere else. And so we focus on safe, we focus on clean, and we focus on affordable. Now, that
yeah,
doesn't mean that people aren't working, because typically people are working. But what it allows me to do is I can go to people and I can say, listen, we're able to charge less because we don't have people on call 24 hours a day. And because we're not sending people in to clean your room every single week. My housekeeping goes in once a week. So I can have one housekeeper for the entire building because she just does things on rotation. So I'm saving on staffing, which you identified as a big challenge. And then
yeah.
what I've been able to do is I fixed up a couple of rooms, listed them on Airbnb. So I've got kind of higher level rooms. I've got the entry level rooms. And then what I focused on was just making sure it's clean. Everything's clean. It's not fancy, but it's clean and it's safe. And we have security cameras and we hold people accountable. And now what we've started seeing is there are seniors who can't live in their homes anymore, but they might
Yeah.
not want to live in a senior's home or a nursing home, and they need a transition. So we've built this base of these longer term extended stay people who are there for, several months, a year. We've got someone who's been in there for 2 years now. And that makes sure that I can keep the lights on and that I can ride out the seasonality as things come and go. So there's a ton of commonalities. One of the things I love about what you said, Jen, and this is something I see again and again and again in successful investors, is curiosity. You
Yeah.
are curious about other people. You could have looked at the Patels and thought, that's my competition. I don't want to have anything to do with them. But you didn't. You looked at them and said, what makes them do this? What makes them successful? What is their perspective? And curiosity makes us better investors. I love that for what you're working on.
Yes, for sure.
Can can we go into a little bit on kind of the numbers and what you're seeing in yours?
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And before that, I want to add something funny because now my partners are Patels. Hey, they're
Like
great
like
operators, right?
like the Patels, or
Yes,
their
the
last name just
Patels,
happens.
the
Oh,
Patels.
look at that. So you joined them. I love that, Jen.
Yes, yes. I learned so much from them. We just happen to have same values, same principles, and that helped us align. And I was pretty open with them. I'm like, listen, I'm not intending to become an expert operator in this, but I have money to bring to the table. I have experience, and I'm a whiz when it comes to optimizing business. And when I showed them what I was doing, they were blown away. And we just got into another 3 hotels together. in a portfolio. And the reason why I'm putting a $50 million is a portion of that will be dedicated to extended stay hotels, right? And they're developing their own brand too. So curiosity can lead can lead you to open many doors. So you want to be curious to be successful. And as you mentioned, like, you can explore and be curious, but you need to master your numbers. That's critical. So how do you master the numbers? So I'm going to talk a little about how you look at a hotel, because it's different than how you look at a single family home, how you look at a non-performing note, how you look at a different asset type. So I'm going to mention this for you and for everybody there. I needed to put something that I remember quickly. I use what I call the USA formula. I think about the usage of the property, and that allows me to do a lot of a study to know multiple exit strategies, even when no one can look at them. The other thing I look at it is the strategy, right? A lot of us go with only one mindset in the old way. I'm going to go do flips and do numbers. I take the after repair value. I take 30% off, less the rehab, and that's my number. I look at that with one strategy, but I look at multiple strategies with this specific, property. And I also define the property, the asset type, the single family, the multifamily, the storage unit, that they're used for different things. So I call it my USA formula, right? It helps me remind the things that I need to consider, the things that I need to do due diligence on, so I can be very creative with my numbers. And that allows me to do what I call a deeper research or a deeper due diligence to understand that if I get into these assets and if I make mistakes, I have a profitable exit strategy. And it has helped me with every deal. And I put this together based on all the times I lost a lot of money, based on all the times that I was studying and I was learning from other people. But going back to the numbers, right? I selected the buy and hold property, or the strategy, better to say, the buy and hold strategy. Then I went into the asset type, which it was a hotel, and the usage, which is hospitality, right? And as I was looking at that specific model, here's one project that I don't know if you want to share, but I want you guys to see the numbers on this one. And Elizabeth, should I share the numbers on this one so people can see it, or should I just mention it?
No, if
Okay.
you don't mind that it'll go out on YouTube and be on the internet after this, then go ahead and share. I think people love specifics.
I'm not sure. Let me talk about it then, because there's the addresses in there, so I want to make sure we protect certain confidence. But let's call it like this: we got this project for $7.3 million. The project, based on the existing performance, it wasn't worth it. That. How do I know that? When you're buying a hotel, a lot of people ask me, what is the cap rate? And I'm like, okay, the cap rate in the hotels specifically, it was only used in the past. And if you look at the history, just to determine value when you didn't have enough components to define the valuation of a property in the hotel industry. And I'm talking about just hotels, right? Now, when you look at that and say, okay, then how do you evaluate if a property is worth it? So you take the gross income, pretty simple, and you multiply it by a factor in the area where you live. In this case, this hotel was performing like, I think it was like 1.8 gross profit, and it has a couple of rooms down. So, and he was asking 7.3. The factor for this specific area was 4. So you take the 4 and you multiply by the 1.6, something like that. And that's going to tell you the value. So we were overpaying $1.3 million. People will say, I won't get into this deal. If you're a flipper and you come only with a way of thinking, one level thinking. Now, where I came from when I was looking at the deal is like, okay, let me check 2 situations. I can have this as a regular hotel, that's the usage, or can I bring a contract for this project? So I did my numbers in a regular hotel, and the numbers that you have to use for a hotel is what they call the average daily rate, or the ADR, which is how much your property is making. You also have to take your revenue per day, right? So you know how much money your hotel makes, and also your occupancy ratio. So it depends. If it's poorly managed, you will see that they're under 70% normally. But what I noticed is that the average daily rate was lower than anything in the market. The occupancy was lower than anything in the market, and the revenue was lower than anything in the market. So I took the market standard and I make my numbers and my pro forma with the market standard. And with that, my question is, if I buy it for this price, right? If I buy it for 7.2, 7.3 million, can I still cash flow? Can I cover my debt? Can I pay my investors? Can I pay my payroll? And I went through the entire pro forma in a hotel, which is different than a regular property. In a regular property, you have maintenance, you have property taxes, you have insurance, and all the regular things that goes with a property. When you buy a hotel, you're also buying the business. That increases the complexity and the math and the calculations, but it's not rocket science. I can assure you this is not. It just includes more lines in your Excel sheet. That's what it is. But after I did all my math, if I could get these hotels to perform consistently at 80%, 75 to 80%, I will still be able to cash flow, pay investors, and pay myself, right? So I'm like, okay, at the lower point, based on what the market is telling me, this hotel has the opportunity to become that hotel. But what will happen? What will happen if I bring a contract to this project? And when I run the numbers, my brain was like, whoa, the valuation of this property, and I'm talking here real numbers. We closed in this hotel last year on August of 2023, okay? So we get this hotel for $7.3 million. We go and run it. At first, we struggle a little bit to get it to run. It took us six to 8 months to start to get it to cash flow, and we got the contract. As soon as we got the contract, right, we start gross income. Elizabeth, I think you're gonna love this. Per month, $320,000 gross income. Net income, $170,000 average net income per month, for an investment at $7.3 million, but it gets better. The people who wanted to buy this hotel really needed this hotel. And the reason why they needed to do this specific hotel is it didn't come attached with all the fair housing restriction that a multifamily did, right? They were able to host people here without all of these regulations that limit the performance of a property. So after we went through all of that and we did it for like 8 to 9 months, the person came and they asked us, can we buy this hotel? And we tell them, sure, we will sell it to you at the market value. We went and sell the hotels to them for $12.45 million. Pretty cool number. So, but imagine this is one hotel inside of 3 hotels under a portfolio in a fund that I put together, just because I was willing to look at this deal with a completely different thinking, a second level of thinking. I did my due diligence in a deeper level. I understood that the market, and I wasn't a whiz about operating hotels. I knew exactly what I was good at it. And then I went and I see what is the possibilities of this hotel using my USA formula. This is, it can be many of these strategies, right? It can be flipping or anything like that. What is the usage? Can I use it as a hotel? Can I use it as a government contract? Can you use it as a transient? How can I use this hotel specifically? Now, also keep in mind, here's another thing. When I did my due diligence in the Phoenix metro area, Elizabeth, what I find out is that they were begging for hotels because the multifamily investors that became a hype went and start buying all of these hotels to convert them into multifamily, because it makes more sense to invest in construction and turn them into multifamily instead of them going and build ground up. So the ground up were the luxury hotels, while the other people were creating the B and C class, which it was the hype at the moment. A lot of mistakes happened in that asset during that year. Sadly, a lot of people got hurt and lost a lot of money, a lot of money. But what I'm trying to say is, I did my due diligence, demand and supply. Who are the buyers of these specific projects? What are the usages? That's the usages for these property beyond the regular way. What is the strategy that I can use here, and what kind of properties can I do in this market specifically? And for Phoenix metro area, it was the hotels that was the key that allowed me to outperform many projects. And sadly, while a lot of syndications are failing over 50%, we have a blessed journey since 2021, actually since 2020 with the first hotel until now, just because I was willing to look at a project in a completely different way, in a completely different than the Airbnb, it has to get a 30% discount, less the rehab. That wasn't my kind of thing. That's the regular thinking. That's how a lot of people get stuck. They need to work with people like you, Elizabeth, who are curious, right? They need guidance for someone like you that they're willing to explore opportunities to optimize the existing portfolios and look for other properties that might be like that diamond that they're looking for. You don't need 100 properties to get to $150 million. I literally did a portfolio of 30 properties, and that's how I built a $150 million portfolio.
I love that. And it's not a portfolio of properties where it's asset rich and cash flow poor. And
Correct.
that has been one of my biggest discoveries with my commercial building, that
Yep.
I have so much control. I have so much control over my cash flow. I can turn on the tap with marketing. I can play with the rates. I can play with the occupancy. I can play with the staffing. I can play with the offerings. There are so many different levers and ways to make money that I look at it now and I almost stand back and I wonder. I understand, multifamily, that's where we build wealth, but there's so little flexibility with it. There are so many other ways to invest in real estate that are not kind of this like one trick pony that we've sort
Yep.
of been led to believe that, apartment buildings are the pinnacle of all investing.
Yes, I think a lot of people, and this is something I don't teach real estate, right? I do teach raising capital, but not real estate. But I think I told people all the time, you need to figure out where you are financially today, your resources, credit cards and retirement accounts, friends and family, and all of that. And you need to figure out the time that you're willing to spend in real estate and how much do you know. And the reason why I say that is that the issue and the good things, don't get me wrong, I love multifamily, but the issue of what happened with multifamily, everyone got to learn multifamily because there was the benefits of cash flow, appreciation, cost segregation for your tax savings. And a lot of people got very excited for all the benefits that come with a multifamily investing. But that's not the only asset where you can apply that. And that's where people got very limited. So people got hyped up, it's cash flow, I can do this, let's learn multifamily. It takes knowledge, it takes time to learn these strategy to do it right.
Mhm.
And you need to evaluate where you are today, right? Where you are today is not where you're going to be tomorrow. You just need to lay out possibilities, be curious out there. What else can I explore so I can get to my goal? It doesn't matter. Everyone has a completely different journey. But being curious is that first step, knowing where you are, the access of resources, knowledge, and also taking that other step, which is doing your research, doing your due diligence, and mastering your numbers in any type of asset, in any type of a strategy, so you can really start like shifting the way that you do business. And I think that that's what a lot of people is missing. They keep learning the regular flipping, they keep learning the multifamily aspects, and they don't know how to shift it. They don't know the pros and the cons of a multifamily, right? For
Mm.
me, I understood very well. Multifamily are great, but it have restriction. There's rent control. You cannot evict someone just because. There's very little flexibility. A lot of the lenders, and people don't know this, put a lot of restrictions for people who are intending to do short-term rentals. They only allow X percentage of that, and they might not even account it against the performance of the property. So if you don't know those things about the financing, you might overlook and think that you can do 60% of your pro forma based on short-term rentals because it's going to make a lot of money, and then you find out that the lender doesn't let you. That will plummet your deal right away. So you need to be aware of those details, right? And when you are getting into an asset. So going through the due diligence upfront, through the work, and I don't want anyone to get into the paralysis analysis that never make a decision, but take the time to learn, take the time to talk to other investors about the pros and cons of the asset type you're getting into. Learn about their experiences, and then you decide if this is something I want to deal with. It's as simple as that. So I think that a lot of people get blinded too by the cash flow. I want to be financially free. There's a lot of misinterpretations of what is cash flow, right? First of all, it doesn't come as fast as people think. Second, is not immediately. Third, it's this is my favorite too. It's not immediately, and also it might not work out, right? If you didn't do the numbers right. So you need to know your numbers, your strategies, your usage, because it happened to me recently. I trusted one of my partners, and she knows what she's doing, but I think she was overconfident on the project and the values. And I invested the money with her. I brought some capital, Elizabeth, and I was freaking out because I didn't do my proper due diligence. And when I look at the numbers, it's like what I was thinking, right? Now, it doesn't mean that I got stuck there. I'm like, I can't do this like this. I went and I went through due diligence. It took me 48 hours, but I dig. And what I find out is if we will turn that usage of this property into sober living facility, we were doubling, almost tripling the income of this property. And now we shifted the usage of this property with still the same strategy, which is developing 3 units. We've still been able to select the asset type, which is a triplex. But what we're going to do is we're going to change that usage. But at some point, it wasn't going to cash flow because I was pursuing the cash flow aspect and I did not do my due diligence. Mistakes happen. So people stick to your process, do your due diligence no matter what. It happens to everybody. But I was curious enough to see what else we could have done with this property. And that's the direction we're doing. Now we went from 123,000 a year on profit to 324,000. So that's a big difference. It makes a completely different valuation. And now we can move forward with the project. However, as you mentioned, Elizabeth, you as an investor, we need to be aware where we are. Do we want cash flow? Do we want big fat checks? Do we need both? We need to be very real. This is not time to be prideful or, ashamed of where we are. We just need to be realistic and trace a path to get where we want to go and close that gap. So
yes, I love that. Jen, I can't believe an hour has flown by. It is 1 o'clock. There was one question. A gentleman was asking how he finds more information on the Patel family. I responded and you can Google them and they're all over. They're written up in media all over the US. So that would be my recommendation. It looks like there's actually a book written about them too, which I came across in my kind of quick search. Pam Hope is asking how long, like what's the criteria, what's an extended stay, and where are your hotels? So your hotels, Phoenix, Arizona was the first one. Extended stay, how many is that? A couple of days, couple of weeks? What would you consider extended stay?
That's a good question. So I prefer Phoenix metro area, but I also have hotels in New Mexico. We have been looking in Orlando, Florida, and other markets, including North Carolina. Every year I do like a research, but personally, you can do this in every area. I just like metro areas because of the flexibility. And in regards to changing the usage for different things or even getting contracts. Now, to answer the question of how long, it depends, but personally, you have to learn your market. For us, it can be 1 week that you get one price, 2 weeks, you get another price, 4 weeks, you get another price. So it depends, but here's something to consider. Sometimes there are restriction in the city that if they stay for X amount of time consecutive, you might have to evict them. So you need to be very aware of the government guidelines. And of course, we have different ways on how we manage that, and we can talk about that in another time. But you have to be aware of what your city requires and then decide when you're operating how long you want to declare the extended stay.
Love it. Thank you. Jen, thank you so much. You are an absolute wealth of information. I feel like we could spend an entire weekend together talking about our extended stay properties and all the things that are in common and sharing ideas. And I think that is one of the biggest takeaways from the webinar today. I'd love to, if you get a second, type in the chat box, tell me what your takeaway from today was, what kind of really stuck out for you, and what you will be applying or utilizing. The biggest takeaway for me was the opportunities that come from staying curious and looking at asking people in the town questions. What community is underserved? What are the needs? For us, it was discovering that there was no seniors community in Kirkland Lake. So there's this huge area where seniors were being underserved, and we could use our building to be able to meet those needs. So stay curious, ask lots of questions, build your network. Opportunities will come to you. Thank you so much for attending. I'm going to quickly share Jen's contact information here. So you can find me. Of course, you can subscribe on YouTube so that if you miss registering for any future webinars or you want to go back and watch any previous ones, amazing guests like Jen sharing all their knowledge and expertise. Here is the QR code that I promised if you would like to book some time with me and chat about opportunities to either optimize your portfolio or create cash flow, or both. And then Jen, we can find her on, we've got YouTube, we've got Instagram, we've got LinkedIn. Jen Maldonado, absolutely fantastic business owner, female entrepreneur, and hotel visionary. I love that. Thank you so much, Jen, for attending. It has been wonderful spending more time with you and getting to know you better.
So it was a pleasure to be here with all of you today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jen. Take care. Everyone, have a fantastic week. Have a good week. We'll see you in December for our next webinar. Thanks, everyone.